Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of The Journey to National Master. This game was round 7 of my HS Open 2023. I got paired up against Zain Patel, a 1982 rated player, also a under 12 British champion. So, not a tough not an easy pairing at all, but I wasn't expecting easy pairings for the rest of the tournament, honestly. Um, but yeah, so the last game, I got very upset because I just lost without putting up a fight. The previous game before that, I also felt like I couldn't create chances. So, I was frustrated. So I decided to just go all in and to really play super aggressive, super crazy, and just go ballistic. Just try to murder my opponent on the board. And if I was gonna lose, I was gonna just throw everything at my opponent and make him calculate and stuff like that. So let's see how I opened the game. I opened with d4. He went knight f6, knight c3, d5, and bishop f4. So I went back to the job Avalon, but this time I had something crazy prepared, not the quiet job Avalon like 2 rounds ago. Here my opponent played a6. This is what I was expecting. I saw like 2 games of him, or of OTB games, and he played in both of them against the Jobavi, played a6. So, I was prepared with something crazy here. e3 by me, e6 by my opponent, and now the crazy move, very aggressive, very, very complicated, is g4. Just not waiting, not developing pieces, just throwing the pawn at him and threatening to play g5 straight up. Like, I don't care, pushing the pawns on the king side and just going all in. And here my opponent played the best move, bishop b4. So yeah, he was prepared as well. I mean, he knew what he was doing. And kids these days, bro, they know a lot of theories, so it's really hard to surprise them with ideas. But okay, he still needs to know a couple more moves, not only bishop b4. So let's test it. Here I went knight e2, which is the idea that I'm going for. I'm going for a pawn sacrifice, and yeah, what I prepared was something like knight g4, and after rook g1, let's say a sample line could be g5, counter-attacking my bishop. I would take the knight, he would take the bishop, I would take the pawn with the knight. Here he could play knight c6 to develop, and I would play knight h5, and this is a super complicated positions with the chances for both sides, and actually very, very interesting. But my opponent actually didn't go for knight takes g4. He thought for a while and he went for knight e4, which is actually not such a good move, but I didn't prepare for this. I didn't look at this. I looked at c5, b5, and castles here. So yeah, I didn't look at knight e4 at all. So I was on my own and I started thinking. And while I was thinking, I decided to play h4 with the simple idea that I wanted to prevent, the queen coming here to h4 and attacking f2. So, the best way to prevent it is to just throw the pawn h4, just start pushing on the king side and expanding there. This is not a really good move according to the engine. It's a mistake. Here the best move would have been either a3, just asking the bishop where he wants to go, or bishop g2. But in both cases I didn't here on bishop g2, I don't know why I didn't consider this, honestly, because okay, he can't really play queen h4 because I take the knight. So yeah, bishop g2 was probably a decent move. I mean, he could take here on c3, I would take back, and I mean, this position is perfectly playable for white, but for some reason I didn't play bishop g2, which I thought was also good. But this allows some complications that kind of favor black, which I have to be honest, I missed, which is e5. And this is a temporary pawn sacrifice by my opponent. Here I took with the pawn here, opening this file for me. He took the pawn on g4 with the bishop, and now this position is already super crazy because, I mean, the pin here on the knight, the pressure on the knight on c3, and yeah, this looks already pretty rough for white. But, you know, this is what I want. Not exactly this position, but I wanted a really complicated game full of tactics and fireworks. I wanted something exciting. And here, you know, I had my first big thing of the game. I played queen d3, just getting out of the pin. He played c5, so my opponent is also not really backing down. He also wants the complications, and he wants, you know, to mate me. And this is actually already like a super awesome game, and we aren't even on move 10 yet. So yeah, here I spent a long time also calculating stuff because this is very critical already, and I found the best move. Rook d1, putting pressure on d5 here. My opponent played the best move as well here. He thought for a long while as well. He played bishop f3, you know, attacking my rook on h1. I play rook h3, attacking the bishop and defending the rook at the same time. And here my opponent also finds the best move, which is c4. And yeah, now I have you know, an important decision. What do I do with my queen? Do I play queen d4? Do I play queen takes on d5? Or do I play queen takes on c4? Here in this position, I was only looking at queen takes c4 and queen takes on d5. I ended up playing queen takes on c4, which is, you know, it is equal to queen takes on d5. I don't remember why I didn't like queen takes on d5 specifically, but there was something that I didn't like about this. I think it is the fact that after queen takes on d5, rook takes on d5, my opponent had knight takes on c3, and now he took my knight and the rook is hanging here. But the computer says that this is fine for white because I can take here with the pawn, and after bishop takes on d5, I can take on b4. And yeah, the computer thinks that this is equal, but I didn't like the fact that I was down an exchange here, although, you know, sometimes or most of the times two pieces are better than the rook, but I didn't really like the way this position looked. I didn't like my chances here, so I didn't go for this. I went for the other line, which is queen takes on c4. Of course, a queen sacrificed, but if my opponent takes here on c4, I would take on d8, and after king takes on d8, I could take here on f3. And okay, I mean, my opponent is up an exchange, but I do prefer this version of my opponent being up an exchange. Yeah, I feel like I have better chances now here that my opponent can't really castle, and yeah, I have the bishop pair. My rook is a little bit misplaced, but after the bishop moves, it has pressure on f7, so I feel like this is actually a pretty cool position and better than the last one. But my opponent didn't go for this, actually. He went for a slightly inferior line. He took on c3. Here, of course, I take with the pawn. And now he takes on e2 with the bishop. And, you know, I take with the queen. I calculated all of this until the end of the variation. And, of course, here it looks like I blundered because he has knight takes on c3. And now he has a fork on my rook and my queen. But I think my opponent missed that I have a very strong move here, and the move is literally just queen g4, leaving you know, the rook to be taken, but counter-attacking on g7. And if my opponent doesn't really take the rook on d1 and defends g7, I can move the rook up, and this looks really bad for black. So okay, my opponent had to take the challenge. He took the exchange here, and of course I'm not gonna capture on d1 immediately. I'm gonna first capture on g7, attacking this rook. He has to move the rook to f8, and now I take the knight here on d1, and we reach this position which the computer says that I am better. I am considerably better. 0.7 advantage for white, and yeah, this is crazy. My opponent is technically up in material because he's up an exchange, but it's far from simple. And at this point in the game, we only played 17 moves. My opponent was like down to his last 15 minutes, maybe. I was down to my last 40 minutes, so I had a big time advantage to him. I had like something like a 30-minute time advantage over him. And yeah, here it was awesome actually, because a lot of people were passing towards our board and looking at the game that we were playing, and they were like, what is going on this board? This game is absolutely crazy. So yeah, it was awesome to see people's reaction to this game when they walked by. But here my opponent played 97, and he offered me a draw. And unfortunately for you guys, and for me honestly as well, I accepted the draw. And here I'm very much better according to the computer, and there's a lot of ways for me to continue. But I was scared, after doing all these crazy sacrifices and moves. I got scared, and I didn't really see a way to win immediately, so I accepted the draw. Yeah, my biggest worry, I think I was gonna play the best move here, which is bishop d3. Very, reasonable move, developing the last piece. I'm gonna move my king soon to e2, and I'm targeting and threatening to take here on h7. My opponent doesn't really have a way to defend. I'm gonna have a isolated passed pawn here. And yeah, it looks really good for white, but the reason why I didn't keep playing was that I was afraid of something like, either queen b6 or queen a5. Let's say queen b6. Yeah, let's say I would take here on h7, for example. I was afraid of like long cast. And yeah, I didn't like the fact that my opponent could, have his king in safety here, and later on he could put a rook on the c file and start attacking me. And also he's gonna put a rook on h8 here because he connected the rooks. But although like this is not simple at all, because if he immediately goes to b8, he loses a piece, because I have e6 check, and I'm picking up the knight. So yeah, this is not simple at all, actually. He might be able to check me on b1 and take this pawn, but I can hide on e2. At the same time, he can play knight c5 to target my bishop on d3, and this, I don't want to lose this bishop. He's gonna put a rook on h8. I mean, if I move the bishop from this diagonal, he can tuck the king here. So yeah, this is very, very complicated. My rook is kind of weirdly placed on h3. I feel like my pieces are not really coordinating that well. And yeah, the computer loves this for white. Just says queen f5, and I'm much, much better here. Actually a very short game, only 17 moves, but it was full of action, super, super interesting. And yeah, the next game will also be super, super interesting, super full of sacrifices, and super crazy. But that one went to distance, so be sure to check that one out. And thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this game, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.